Continuing on part 2. So talking about our plastics, I think it's a little bit easier to illustrate here on this VSS M stock, sort of their process, because a lot of people or a lot of places in English you may see that they're like, oh, they're polymer hardware, or your handguards, your plastic bits are all 3D printed, or they're garbage in terms of quality and build. Well, that isn't entirely true, and it isn't entirely wrong. So looking at this, we can distinctly see that their plastic is molded. And looking at it and feeling it, I'm not really on any of their plastic parts, and I also have a NPO VSK 94 as well, which has also the whole big stock and stuff is plastic. No real concerns about quality in terms of durability, but quality in terms of some of the fit and finish. Like here, it's a big mold line. I think here we have some interfaces with the pour spouts or air vents where there's, they just sanded it to try and clean it up. But from a distance, it looks great. Up close, you can definitely see a lot of the imperfections of it. And so this back portion here is steel right at the surface. And then it was sort of over-molded with plastic around it. And heck, the metal reinforcement comes all the way up into here where your motor screw goes. So, that is, it's good. It's built good materials, just because, and I'll probably talk a little bit more about it when looking at the VSK. It's because they're using what I believe is silicone or a fiberglass molding system, where the mold deteriorates as you produce more and more pieces out of it, versus, when you're set up for just, hey, we have our design and we're just going to spit out a bajillion of these, you use steel molds, and that's probably what this is using, and they don't really deteriorate, or they don't deteriorate fast. However, NPO, being a bit smaller company, or maybe it's just their expertise or what they have available to them, is using this other sort of molding system. And that might be too in part. This is I think the 5th or the 6th version of the VSS that they've made. So they've basically, their business model includes continual improvements to make the most accurate rendition of the airsoft gun possible, which is great, but that's one of the trade-offs you get. And certainly looking inside of our motor grip here too, I do see texture that looks like it's 3D printed. And there, if I were a betting man, I think they 3D printed a thin shell to basically hold the shape and the area more exact for your motor cage and those components. And then they included that, that locked into the mold, the metal piece locked in the mold, and then they just did an over mold of all that, so they don't have to deal with trying to clean up mold imperfections or whatever, or demold this large cavity like that. So honestly, it's a pretty intelligent way of solving a problem. I may or may not be right there, but just, I think, worth noting and talking about a little bit. Particularly the handguard on the VSS here. The only real gripe, or the telltale that you can see, is sort of on the front and the back, which you, to be fair, can't really see, is there's some sanding up on these edges more so, and a little bit of cleanup what looks like on the top and the bottom, but you can sort of see that on any molded part. But the texture is really nice, and the color seems accurate to the plum brown that a lot of your Russian guns use. So I know that this is already really long, but bear with me here. We're on the home stretch. Let's take a look at and talk about weight, which is, in my opinion, something that I've grown to value a lot more as I've been playing airsoft. When you're carrying a gun for a long, full-day event, a pound matters. 2 pounds matter. So using my handy-dandy kitchen scale here, which is actually really nice and accurate. Our LCT comes in at, that's just ounces, 7 pounds, 6.7 ounces, or 3,365 grams. our NPO comes in at 2,624 grams. Oh shoot, I keep on skipping past it. Or 5 pounds, 12.6 ounces. So if I tear, that means our weight difference is 1 pound, 10 ounces, or 739 grams. And that's nothing to sneeze at. Really, when holding it or shouldering it, our LCT here feels very front heavy. And we'll take a look at that here too in just a second. So we'll take a look at the suppressor weight, which is a fairly big deal. Whereas the NPO AEG, you know, the gun has a little bit of heft to it, but distinctly it's like you feel that difference of 1.6 pounds. And it's certainly, the front end isn't really pulling down on you as much. I will say I'm neither, I'd say it's average fitness. I'm not super buff, nor am I super out of shape, but just from like the weight and the feel of shouldering and aiming it, this is a lot nicer. So let's take a look then at, well actually before I weigh the suppressors, the balancing point on our NPO AEG, it's somewhere around here, just to the front of the trigger guard, and on the LCT, it's around here, just at the back of the handguard. So that I think is sort of why I'm feeling a lot more weight to the front. If we were to look at now the suppressor weight, and I'm going to pull off our suppressor, here too is another key difference in how they detach. LCT 90-degree turn comes off. To the best of my knowledge, this is exactly like the real steel. And they even went to the effort here of replicating the actual barrel, which was I think silver, and then it has these ventilated holes, then like some screwy thing up front that also interface with the other baffle bit of the suppressor. But LCT used this like Delrin plug. However, it's just a plug, and that sits slightly loose, and then the barrel has a little bit of play in there too. Something I don't like in terms of accuracy. Now looking at our NPO AEG, it's threaded. Now this is also interesting to me. Oh, I don't need to hold that because, I'll pull it out here 1 second. Our manual, the pictures in our manual show it with this style and say rotate the barrel front sight and rear sight by 180 degrees to remove it. Which is also kind of interesting because 180 degrees would be directly upside down. But basically saying that versus the threaded approach. So clearly they've changed something since this manual was printed. Nothing directly against it, but you might consider updating that at some point. Or when you run out of printed versions of it. So also here, our outer barrel, this is a steel outer barrel, it just sticks out. It doesn't really replicate the real one very good because it's, you know, just designed for airsoft, but there is pretty much no play between our inner barrel and outer barrel. And this is also, of course, steel. Our inner barrel, for what it's worth, this is pretty much, from best of my knowledge, a rebranded ZCI. You know, it's etched with NPO, but it's 6.02 millimeters. So honestly, kudos there, because ZCI is sort of what I would say is your budget option for a decent upgraded barrel. So coming stock with a stainless steel barrel is pretty legit. Okay, NPO suppressor, 489 grams. LCT suppressor, 763 grams. And if we were to go find the difference, 274 grams or 9 ounces or 9.7 ounces. So that's over half a pound difference here, and that's half a pound that's out on the extremity of your gun. Probably the other places where we pick up a bit of weight is in the receiver, a little bit of weight, and also some in the stock, because it is wider, as we'd stated, because they keep that same width. So honestly, really good job at sort of keeping and or minimizing weight. Like I said, this is still steel, and despite the differences to how they attach, neither one is really any concern of breaking or being a weak point, like some of the, I would say, cheaper options of a VSS might give me a little bit of concern. For whatever reason, it might just be that it's... So here there's just a little bit of rotational wobble because the key doesn't fit 100% tight. And honestly here, yeah, there's a little bit less, but realistically, in terms of build quality, either of these, I'm not really concerned of anything there. Their construction's very solid. If you needed to use them as a blunt weapon of self-defense, I think you're perfectly fine. So, we're only probably about half an hour in, so let's, and it's been a long haul, so let's try and wrap this up. So, we talked about a lot of things, and I know there's really sort of big issues to talk about in terms of the gearbox and build quality of the other internals, and like I already touched on the barrel. But that to me is really going to come in the full review once I field it, use it. I plan on using it stock and doing some testing, further testing with that, chrono testing. I'll probably have to adjust it down to my FPS. I do already have a gearbox review or teardown shot. I did go through and go over it. And to be a bit of a spoiler, to summarize it, it's quite good. Honestly, one of the best constructed gearboxes that I've seen in a while. Certainly, like one or two, it's still not, I would say, entirely perfect, but it's one of the closest to like aftermarket, I would say. So that's saying a lot. The wiring, it's sort of your run-of-the-mill, nothing too fancy, but internally it's got a lot of really good parts. There's less that I would say that one would want to do to upgrade internally than, with like LCT or like some of your other VSSs. Build quality, definitely up there. Plastics, in my opinion, if you're expecting absolute perfection and absolute greatness, you will probably be slightly let down by the plastics. But remember, they aren't as big a company. They are striving to continuously improve and create the most accurate replicas. That isn't from them. That's sort of just my observation and from doing research about them. That might actually be part of their mission statement. I don't know, because it's in Russian. This was shipped directly to me from them in Russia. To touch a little bit on things too that I'll talk about in the full review of this. Working with and talking to the representative over there, they were willing to work with me, talk with me. This was purchased by myself, all the money out of my pocket. This review isn't sponsored or any of that jazz. So, they do make a really good gun. Like I said, the fit and finish of all the metal, bar none, excellent. Fit and finish of like the wood, I would say good. This finish looks and feels better. Fit and finish of plastics, I feel like that's sort of where I hit the weird point of talking about it. In terms of size, shape, and accuracy to the real, yeah, and even or the simulated finish or the the exterior texture that they put into the mold, great. some of the results of their molding process, not great. And that's really, if anywhere, that I'm going to knock them. That's definitely the weak point. So nicer molds some point in the future would be great. That being said, too, when and or if they might do that, from talking to them, I relatively have no qualms thinking that I'll be able to just pick up whatever parts when and or if they may produce a improved version, or maybe they eventually get happy with their product, and who knows. But interactions there have all been good. Shipping time from Russia, well, that shipping time from Russia, that was a little over a month, which is honestly pretty impressive amidst the pandemic. But if you know of other accuracies or inaccuracies, feel free to comment or bring them up. I think I tried to cover most of the big ones and the key ones, but overall I'm happy in this. If I walked into a store and touched and felt both of these, I would probably go with this one, just because of how it looks, how it feels, the weight. It's just, even not having done the research, looking at both of them, I feel like you can tell that this one is more accurate to the real, which is sort of odd to say. So thanks for watching. Sorry this one's been so long. If you're someone that really cares about the details, hopefully, some of these measurements and other things helped you make a decision when looking at it. And if you have questions on how they came or whatever, I have a bunch of other videos. I even have an unboxing, which is a bit odd because it's just unboxing all the parts, but because they ship disassembled. But yeah, thanks. This has been Sherlock, and thanks for sticking through this one.